Hey everybody, what's up? Today I want to talk about 5 epics that if you pull them, you should 6-star them, ascend them, fully book them, incorporate them into your teams because they're killer champs. So in my live streams over at twitch.tv/JGigs and in my comments a lot, of course, I'm sure you guys know that a lot of the common questions are, is this particular champ worth building? Should I book this champ? Should I do this with this champ? So I figured I would give at least a reference point for 5 epics that if you pull, you don't even need to ask, yes, 6-star them, yes, fully ascend them, yes, fully book them. And I reckon we'll kind of go at a from 5 to 1. We'll start at the least best here. I don't want to say worst because not the case, but I think for the number 5 spot, we're going to say Tyrael. Now, I haven't heard Tyrael get talked about in a while. He was very, very popular for most of the first year that I was playing this game, and lately, I don't hear him brought up as much anymore, but I don't think that he's any worse. I don't think that anything's changed. He's still a fantastic champ. He's going to help you in clan boss. He's going to help you in dungeons. He's going to help you in campaign. He can be good in PvP. He's going to be good in faction wars. There's really no content in the game that you can't take this dude. So let's talk about his skills and why he's good. He's got an attack down on his first skill. Now, of course, that's killer for clan boss. It's particularly handy for counterattack comps, but it can be good outside of counterattack. It's good for all the other dungeons. It's basically good for everywhere because you're reducing damage taken, right? He's also a defense champ that scales off of his defense, so he can also put out some good damage. Here we've got an AoE defense break, and if the target's under an attack break, it'll place a sleep. Now, the sleep is okay, you know, it can be a nice bonus, but generally you're going to be running AoE anyway in the dungeons, and you can't sleep the clan boss, so usually the sleep's going to get knocked off, but it can be pretty handy. But the AoE defense break is nice across the board. You've heard me say it dozens of times now. Any champ with an AoE defense break is good. So on top of the other utility he offers, he also has that, and it's really, you know, skilled up. It's 100% chance, so it'll be just reliant on his accuracy. It can be a very reliable AoE defense break. Again, scales off defense, and he's a defense champ. And then his A3 attacks one target, decreases the target's turn meter by 50%. If the attack fully depletes the turn meter, it will place a stun. And again, scales off defense. Again, this makes him handy for spiders. Now we're talking about someone with an AoE defense break, an attack down, and a turn meter knockback for the spider. And then to top everything off, he's got a defense lead. So he's just a fantastic champ. He synergizes very well with himself. He fits into a lot of different comps. You can pretty much put him on any kind of team you want to put him on, and he's going to contribute. So book him up, skill him, you know, book him up and skill him up. A 6-star him, ascend him, book him up. He's an excellent champ. Next, I want to talk, I think he's in here. Yep. This guy right here, Mausoleum Mage. This dude is ridiculous. This dude is really, really good. He's another one, don't even ask, just build him when you get him. We got a speed break on the first turn, which is nice. It can be handy in dungeons and things like that. But really where he shines is his other two. His A2 places a block debuffs on all allies for 1 turn. Places a crit rate buff and a defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. This is an example of someone who would be kind of nice with Tyrael because he's defense buffing and crit rate buffing, and Tyrael is a defensive damage dealer on top of the other utility. So it's an example of someone that would synergize, but you've got an AoE defense buff and block debuffs in the same skill. This can be very helpful in a lot of different places. It can be really helpful in arena. It's great in dungeons to keep the debuffs off your team. If you're running a team that's not speeding through, which most players are, right? Building speed teams for the higher levels of the dungeons is tough. So, and then the crit rate buff is just going to help your team output a little bit more damage, and you can get it down to a 3-turn cooldown. So he's going to keep a defense buff up pretty regularly, do a pretty good job of keeping block debuffs up. And then his third skill removes all debuffs from all allies, and then heals all allies by 10% of his own max HP. Now he's got pretty high base HP, which means you can get his max HP to scale fairly easily. He's one of very few remove all debuffs from all allies champs in this game. There are not very many of those. Hackhorn does it. Maybe Reliquary Tender does it. I can't remember. There's a very small selection of full team full cleanses in this game, and he does it, and he offers great utility around it. Beyond that, heals each ally by a further 10% if one or more debuffs are removed, and fills turn meter by 15% for all allies if 2 or more are removed from that ally. So if there's a lot of debuffs to be cleansed, it becomes a pretty substantial heal and turn meter boost. So he's really good at recovering from your team kind of getting into a bad situation, whether it be arena or dungeons or faction wars or whatever it is. He's good at turning that around and even making it even more of a net positive, right, because of the bad situation. So he's another one that you can use him in almost anywhere in the game. I wouldn't take him into clan boss, but beyond that, he's pretty handy everywhere. Very easy to build, lots of utility. Killer champ. Moving on, I want to talk about another one of the OG homies that I don't hear talked about much anymore, is Steel Skull. I feel like people have kind of forgotten about this dude. I don't hear him talked about as much anymore. He's another one, in my opinion, unless you pull him way later in the game and you just don't need him, it's going to be a long time before you outgrow him, and you may never outgrow him. I mean, he's really a killer champ. He's got an A1 poison. Now, the chance to land is low, so this does need to be skilled for it to become noteworthy, but skilled up, he can put out some pretty heavy damage in clan boss. I've seen him do, I've seen comps, unkillable comps, where he's done like 17 million himself. So he can really pump out some poison damage skilled up and with the right team. But he's potentially stacking 2 poisons with his A1. That right there is pretty nice. Here we've got a single target full cleanse and a really substantial heal. This is really nice, again, and it can get down to a 3-turn cooldown. He has high base speed. He's going to turn cycle pretty well. He's going to do this fairly often, and whether it be a clan boss fight or wherever it is you're taking him. And then his A3, 60% defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, and heals all allies by 20% of their max HP. So it's basically a 20% health bar fill for each ally, right? He's not healing based on his own. He's healing based on theirs. So again, this gets down to a 4-turn cooldown, so he keeps the defense up pretty regularly. He heals pretty well with 2 different skills. He's got 2 skills that heal, and then faction crypt defense lead, which you're probably going to have a better lead for faction crypts. But as far as being a good support champ, going to make your life easier, especially if you pull him super early. He's really going to help carry you through some more difficult content than you'd be able to do ordinarily. And again, he really can be fantastic in clan boss. So another one, you can take him anywhere in the game. He's going to be good. And it's not really that hard to build. His base stats scale well. Great kit, lots of support. Don't be sleeping on Steel Skull. You feel me? Don't be sleeping on the homie. In the number 2 spot, Miscreated Monster. This dude is an absolute monster. No pun intended. His kit is ridiculous. He's great in arena. He's great for spiders. He's almost a cheat code for spiders. He's great in dungeons in general as far as wave control and offering a lot to a fight. He is HP based, 23,000 base HP. He's also got a pretty good HP lead for arena. But let's talk about his kit. He's got a 2-hitter that can place a stun, and it can place a defense break if the stun is placed. Now, if this was just a flat-out defense break, he'd be even more broken than he is. So I guess I don't hate this mechanic. Either way, it's pretty nice. We've got crowd control elements on an A1 and potential to place a defense break. Here we've got an A2 AoE stun. AoE stun, and it shields to 25% of the damage inflicted. Now keep in mind, he's an HP champ. His damage scales off HP. Base HP is 23,000. And it's AoE. He's going to put out some good damage, which means this shield is going to be pretty substantial. And it's got a 50% chance to stun. That's a ridiculous 8-2. And you can skill it up to a 3-turn cooldown. That is pretty ridiculous, right? Beyond that, he's got an A3, places ally protection on all allies for 3 turns. Heals himself by 50% of his own HP, his own max HP, and puts a continuous heal on himself for 3 turns. And you can get this down to a 4-turn cooldown. So He's almost going to keep ally protection up for the whole fight. He's going to keep continuous heals on himself pretty regularly. He's got a pretty substantial heal. He's going to, every 3 turns, he's going to stun, AoE stun, and place more shields on the team. He is just a monstrous support. Again, no pun intended. Places a fear debuff on the attacker for 1 turn whenever an ally is attacked while under an ally protection buff. So he's putting it up for 3 turns, and then every time somebody hits an ally that has that buff on, they have potential to catch a fear debuff. Just wild lockdown. Crazy lockdown potential. On top of being able to do really good damage, on top of supporting himself and the team really well, everything he does is impactful. Everything he does is good. He is so worth a 6-star and tomes and potions and whatever else you got for him. He is killer. He is a fantastic champion. Cannot emphasize how good this dude is enough. And then coming in at the number 1 spot, I don't think it's going to be any surprise to anybody here, but it's going to be Madame Saris. I feel this way about Monster as well. They both are legendary status epics. They are so good, it almost doesn't make any sense. She is so deadgum good. Again, another example of a champ that everything she does is meaningful, it's impactful, and just ridiculous. She is my favorite champ in the game. If you've never heard me say that, I am a big fan. I do also think she happens to be the best epic in the game. So her A1 attacks one enemy, chance of placing a fear debuff, and then if they have more debuffs on them, the chance increases. That's pretty straightforward. Again, A1 fear is pretty nice. It can be pretty aggravating to deal with fear and true fear debuffs. Her A2 attacks all enemies, 40% chance of stealing 1 random buff from each target, okay? So it's an AoE, chance to steal a buff from each target. If she steals any buff from anybody, she puts block debuffs on all allies for 2 turns. So she's hitting everybody on the enemy team who could all have buffs. She's got a 40% chance of stealing a buff from each target. If she steals 1 buff from anyone, block debuffs on the whole team for 2 turns. She's basically going to steal a buff. Under those circumstances, if the whole enemy team is buffed, she's pretty much guaranteed to steal one if you put the accuracy on her. Right? A 40% chance. It's unlikely that a 40% chance is not going to proc against a full enemy team that has buffs on them, right? So she's basically guaranteed to do it if she's got the accuracy. On top of that, anybody that she does successfully take a buff from gets true fear put on them. That's a very loaded A2, right? There's a lot going on there. She's got a buff strip, potential block debuffs, potential AoE true fear, right? If whoever she steals a buff from is going to catch a true fear. That is a really strong A2, but her real bread and butter is this A3 right here. Removes all buffs from all enemies, and then places the stronger version of attack down and defense down on all enemies for 3 turns. Now there are not a lot of AoE full strips in this game. I'm trying to think of who does it. Who else steals all buffs? Not steals, removes all buffs from all enemies. Seer kind of does it, if I'm not mistaken. Buffs, she takes buffs off everybody, but that's kind of different. She removes all buffs. On top of that, even if she just put the defense down with this skill, it's crazy because for arena, if you're trying to cleave especially, going into a fight, you would generally want to be able to strip buffs off of someone and then put a defense down on someone and then attack buff and then do damage. And that's not even talking about needing an attack bar booster, right? She fills such crucial roles here for a team like that by stripping all buffs and going ahead and putting the defense down, that even without the attack down, this is ridiculous. But also given the attack down, now you're taking away the effectiveness of any attack scaling damage dealers on that team for 3 turns that do manage to survive your turn. This makes her really good for dungeons because attack down and defense down. Again, pretty self-explanatory there. Again, A2 is also very handy, and it's AoE. This means you can put crowd control sets on her if you wanted to use her in dungeons. She's going to have a lot of utility there. Another thing worth noting here is that this does not attack the enemies. So any enemies that would have a passive or would gain any sort of benefit, anything that would be triggered by being attacked, does not trigger here because she's not attacking. She's just doing it. She's just removing the buffs and placing the debuffs, which leaves the room for your damage dealer to come in and be the first one to hit someone, because there are some champs that will, if they've got counterattack sets, if they've got, there are different types of passes and things that can trigger when you get attacked. She avoids all that. So she's just, it's so good. It's so good. And then, as if that wasn't enough, she also has a passive, places a shield buff on herself equal to 10% of her own HP at the start of each turn. When attacked while under a shield buff, has a 35% chance of placing a fear debuff on the attacker. Basically, unless you can take it off of her, she's permanently shielded. And if anybody hits her while she's shielded, she puts a fear debuff on them. She's absolutely insane. If anybody thinks that there's a better epic in the game, I would love to hear it. I don't know who it would be. Fantastic champ. I love her skin. I think her animations are cool. I think she's so easily my favorite in the game. And I do think she also happens to be the best. So that's it. If you get any of these 5 champs, again, I don't think it's worth even asking. 6-star them, book them, ascend them, incorporate them into your teams. They're all very, very good, very versatile. You can use them in a lot of different places. You can build them a lot of different ways. I think they're going to be fantastic investments for you. So hopefully you got something out of this. It was fun to listen to me ramble on for a little bit about a few champs. If you have any suggestions that you would like to make on champs that I didn't mention here, there are, of course, other ones that are immediately worth it, other epics that are worth it immediately. But these are 5 I wanted to talk about. So if you have any suggestions for champs I didn't mention here and you want to make a case for them, feel free to drop them in the comments. Again, more information is always better. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I appreciate everybody watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.